This is the new Radiomaster TX15 Max Edition. Now, you might be thinking that this radio does look a little bit like the Boxer, and whilst it is a very similar shape and size to the Boxer, don't be fooled into thinking that it's just another upgrade on the earlier radio. The TX15 is an all-new radio from the ground up, based on the latest microcontrollers, the latest ExpressLRS systems, and what Radiomaster have done here is taken everything that they have learned from all of their radios up to this point to build and deliver the best possible mid-size radio that is available on the market today. Now, in this video, I'm going to give you a complete overview of this radio. I'm going to walk you through all its features. We're going to tear it apart. And then at the very end, I'm going to share with you my thoughts. Before we do that, though, I do just want to be clear and say that Radiomaster did send me this radio over for free to take a look at, although I have to say they have not paid me to make this video. They have not seen this video before it's been published, and as always with all of my content, my thoughts are entirely my own. Okay, so the TX15. Now, I'm just going to do a quick unboxing before we get into it. I'm not going to waste too much time on this. When you get the radio, it comes in this nice white box. Quite unusual from Radiomaster, a white box. You usually get a black one. Inside, you will find the radio itself. That comes in this nice semi-rigid case. We have the instruction manual. We have a sticker pack. Now, the version of the radio that I've been sent here to take a look at today isn't the standard version. Just like many of the other radios from Radiomaster, you're going to have a normal version, which may be available in different colors, and then you have the Max version. Radiomaster have very kindly sent me over the red Max version to take a look at here today. This is the version with the carbon fiber effect plastic top cover, as well as the full CNC metalwork, so metal buttons, full CNC gimbals as well. Depending on the model you choose will obviously depend on what spec you get. Just like the previous Radiomaster radios, the features on the radio externally are dependent on the model. The Max version comes with these lovely Hall effect CNC gimbals. We have that carbon fiber effect front plate. You can see that going around the edge, traditional plastic back, and then the full metal switch work. Now, before we get into the radio, I just want to show you what else is included in the pack. We have some additional accessories as well. Let me just throw them into there. We have a USB cable for charging and communicating with the radio, and we have some blanking plates. Now, these are to replace some of the buttons that come on the radio as standard. Radiomaster have really started to offer some additional customization. There's buttons on the top, which we'll look at in a minute, and you can swap them out for toggle switches if you want to as well. Okay, so to go over the TX15 in a lot more detail. Now, as you can see, externally, it does look a lot like the Boxer, and I will compare it to the Boxer in a bit more detail later on. However, external looks is about where all the similarity ends, because this is an all-new radio, and it has tons of new features. For instance, this radio is based off EdgeTX, but rather than using the STM F4 processor like we've seen on previous radios, this now is based on the STM32H7, specifically the STM32H750. This microcontroller is based around the ARM Cortex-M7 CPU that can run up to 480 MHz. It has 1 MB of onboard RAM, 128 kilobytes of flash memory, and has a bucket load of I/O and additional features. It's a substantially more powerful microcontroller that's going to allow the EdgeTX dev team to do a lot more with this radio in the future. You can see down the bottom here, we have a nice large color screen. It is 3.5 inches in size with a resolution of 480 by 320, has a maximum brightness of 600 nits, but it isn't just color, it is a touchscreen as well, which means you have full control over the graphical user interface for EdgeTX on this radio. So for instance, I can go through the menus and I can select options and scroll and do all of the features with my big pointy stick, as we've been able to do with some of the other bigger radios such as the TX16. Now, obviously, when it comes to colour screen radios, people are always asking, what is it like outside? So I thought I would just pop out and take it out into bright sunshine to show you. I've currently got the screen on maximum brightness. I do still have the screen protector on this right now. However, I have to say that is absolutely fine. I'm looking at it. In bright sunshine, you do get like a bit of reflection off the screen, but there certainly isn't any issues with the readability of the display, even in the full sunlight. It's not quite as easy to read as, say, an LCD like you have on the Boxer here, but the reality is it's got a good brightness to it, and I don't see that being a problem for most people. When it comes to the RC control system, the TX15 does come pre-installed with an ExpressLRS module. This is based on the LR1121 chipset, which means it is a dual band radio. It supports ExpressLRS 900 megs as well as 2.4 gigahertz. It is dual band and supports up to 1 watt of RF power on both bands. It fully supports all of the modes as we've seen in the recent modules from the likes of Radiomaster, such as the Nomad, or the radio, such as the GX12. This radio is a single module radio, so it does support dual band, 868 900 and 2.4 gigs, but it is not a Gemini or Gemini X module. It only has one radio transmitter built in. If you want that dual functionality such as Gemini X, you're going to still want to consider something like the GX12. But what the TX15 does do is give us a radio now that does support that dual band functionality. It works with all of the modes that the new LR1121 chipset supports, and this makes it ideal for use with Radiomaster's XR series of receivers. Those are the newer receivers that are also based on this LR1121 chipset. You've got receivers such as the XR1, the XR2, the XR3, as well as the XR4. There are single and dual band receivers available with both antenna or full receiver diversity as well, but it doesn't limit you to just these receivers, because it does still support all of the other receivers as well, depending on the mode. You can intermix the older receivers with the SX chipsets with the newer transmitters with the LR chipsets. There's just a few modes that are not directly compatible, and this is again future-proofing the user, giving you the ability out the box to use it in low band if you want to for long range flying, but then have all of the benefits of the high rates in 2.4 gigahertz as well. So whether you're racing or whether you're flying wings over great range, this radio has got you covered. This is the max version of this radio, so it does come with Hall effect CNC gimbals. Depending on the version that you buy, it will either come with their new version 5 Hall sensor gimbals on the standard version, and this version comes pre-fitted with these Radiomaster's new AG02 gimbal. Now, just like the AG01, the AG02 is a full metal aluminium CNC gimbal. It is a Hall effect gimbal, and the AG02 has improved upon what Radiomaster did with the AG01s. They say they're fitted with the next generation low noise Hall sensors. They have full travel adjustment in both the vertical and the horizontal, and Radiomaster say that they've been able to reduce rotational inertia by just over 20% compared to the previous gimbal, delivering smoother, faster stick input. Now, we will take a closer look at these gimbals a little bit more later on when we get the radio apart. You can see that they are very similar to the AG01, which was a fantastic gimbal. And what's great here is that the AG02 is a full-size gimbal. It is basically a direct replacement for the AG01. So not only is it compatible with the TX15, but it's also compatible with the TX16 and the Boxer as well. You can see on the Max version, it also includes this LED ring as well, and that isn't just a fixed color LED ring, it is a color changing LED ring, and again, I will show you that in some more detail later on. Alongside all of those changes, we also have a built-in microphone in this radio for future use. There's a built-in gyro, and this radio also has 4 gigabytes of onboard storage with the option of installing an external SD card as well. When it comes to the switches and buttons, we have all of the usual that you would expect to find, but Radiomaster have done some nice things here. For instance, along the top, we've got our toggle switches. These are 4 3-position switches. So each of these is a 3, which is great to see. We have our 2 potentiometers in the center. We have 2 push buttons on the corners. We have a latching one on the left, which is usually your arming button, and then you have a momentary one on the right. What's also great is that these are swappable. You can replace these with toggle switches as well if you want to. Then down the bottom, we have our usual EdgeTX controls. We've got our model, system, return, page forward, back and telemetry, as well as our roller wheel. On the max version that you see here, all of these are CNC, but you may find they're plastic on the standard model. Around the gimbals, we have our trim switches, and then in the middle, we have our 6-way buttons, and this 6-way button is fully programmable, fully connected to the microcontroller, which means you can configure it to be 6 positions on 1 output. You can have 6 independent toggling or momentary outputs, 3 2-position, whatever you want. These are fully configurable within the EdgeTX system, and they even have their own color changing LEDs on them as well. In the middle, you will find our big illuminated power button, and then above this, we have our speaker. And as you can see, it has a nice built-in folding antenna as well. Looking around the rest of the radio, on the top, you will find your DSC port as well as a headphones port, a combined USB port. This is a single port that does both charging as well as communication and upgrading of the firmware. Then on the bottom, you will see that there's no ports, but we do have some threaded inserts. And then on the back, you will find a module bay, because this radio, whilst having ExpressLRS built in, does still support a full JR style module. And then at the bottom, we have our battery bay. If I just flip that out, you can see there, I've got the standard batteries in here, but there's plenty of size in here for a big LiPo or lithium ion if you wanted to. And under this, you can see the slot for your micro SD card. But as I've said, there's not one populated as standard because there are 4 gigs of storage built into this radio already. Now, when it comes to software, as I've mentioned already, this radio is running EdgeTX, and it is doing that on that brand new H7 CPU. EdgeTX is in a bit of a transition away from some of the older microcontrollers, and the H7 is the fastest CPU that's going to be used today in radios. So things like this with that nice color touchscreen are going to be based around the H7, and you might see black and white radios still continue to use the F4 series. Now, as for how that translates into real-world use, well, most people won't see a massive difference unless you're used to using a touchscreen radio. This is definitely a lot more responsive than the likes of the TX15. If I just power it up, you'll get to see the boot time on this radio, just to see how fast it now kicks in. It is really nice and quick. And I have to say, moving around the menus on this radio is really nice. There's no lag. You can simply hop into the menus. Everything is very fast, very reactive, and it just makes for a nice user experience. Obviously, that isn't going to change how well the radio performs from a stick perspective, but it definitely makes a difference when it comes to navigating through menus, adjusting settings and things like this. It just means that you're not having to put up with any lag like you might have seen on some of the other radios. Now, obviously, there are a lot of little nice features on this radio as well. As I mentioned earlier, we have that built-in microphone that there isn't any functionality for yet, but hopefully we will see something around that in the future. But there is also that gyro that is built into this radio as well, and that offers some really quite cool functionality. For instance, you can configure that gyro to directly control a channel output. So for instance, if we go into our model settings and if we go across onto our mixes, and if I scroll down the bottom, you can see here channel 13 and 14 has been pre-configured. You've got an input source available for the gyro, which is tilt X and tilt Y. This is available under the normal source menu, and you can then use that to directly control outputs from the radio itself. So if we go into our channel monitor and I just hop across to page 2, you can see 13 and 14 there. If I pick the radio up, you can see tilting the radio has a direct effect on those channel outputs. So again, you could use it for some form of hand tracking on a gimbal if you wanted to, but you can also do some cool stuff with this around the programmable functions as well. So for instance, you could even configure the radio that when you tilt it forward, it gives you an update about your battery voltage. You can use that as a trigger for anything within the special functions in the radio. So just as an example, I've currently got a logical switch set up, and I've also got a special function set up as well to play the throttle value when I tilt the radio. So as an example, I'm going to put the throttle to maximum. I'm going to tilt it forward. You can see it is reading out the throttle value when I tilt the radio forward. Doesn't do it when I tilt it back, but you could program this to do things like read out your battery voltage in that specific scenario. So again, it's just a nice little additional feature that is built into the TX15 as standard. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this max version of the radio comes with the RGB LEDs pre-installed. These are actually fully addressable, controllable LEDs, and I can actually change them on a switch here. And what I'm going to do next is walk you through the options that are available and show you how you can actually control them on this radio. And this is all done via Lua scripts. If you go into the system menu, and if we go across into our internal storage, if we go down to scripts, you will find that there is an option for RGB LED. Now, this allows us to actually control the LEDs on the gimbals. This isn't where you would actually set it. You will need to actually program it via the special functions, which I will show you in a minute. But what's nice about this is that you can even select this via a switch like I've got up here. Now, before I do this, I'm just going to go and dim the lights so you can see this in a bit more detail. We have our Lua scripts listed down, and I'll walk you through each one, and then I'll show you how to change them. Now, at the moment, we'll turn on B back. So if we execute that, you can see this stays with blue in the background, and it has a color chaser which is moving around, and that color chaser is actually changing color as it moves around. It's now red. We can set the same thing to go forward. So that was going anti-clockwise. This is now going clockwise. We've got blue, just like you see here. So that's just a standard blue screen. We've got flow, which gives us an RGB color on the gimbals. We've got our standard green. We've got lights off. We've got orange. You've got pink or purple with the reverse chaser. The same again, however, this time going forward or clockwise. You've got the police siren mode, which again gives you that flashing red and blue. We have purple. You have a fixed rainbow color. You've got this fading RGB, which then fades between each of the colors available within the LEDs. So you can see it's just cycling between them. We have this runner feature, which again is cycling between the colors just as a runner. Bright turquoise blue, another chaser, we have white, yellow. Now, as I've said, you need to control these via the special functions. And to do this, what you want to do is go into your model setup, and we're going to go all the way along to our special functions. Under here, we have the ability to choose a special function for the Lua script. So I have a switch, which is SA, which is this one up here, which is top left. The function is RGB LEDs, and the particular script that I've chosen is blue, and then it's enabled to repeat. As a result of that, I'm then able to control the LEDs on my switch. So for instance, we've got blue, police, and blue forward. So for instance, top gives us this blue. I can flick it, the switch, it goes into the police mode. And then I can also flick it down again, and it goes into the chaser. Now I could program this to be able to control this in any of the modes that I've shown you here today. And again, it's just some real nice additional functionality that Radiomaster have built in. Now, the next thing we're going to do is a comparison, because obviously there's going to be a lot of people wondering, what is this radio like compared to the Boxer, the GX12, as well as the Pocket and a couple of others? Obviously, the big one people are going to want to compare it to is the Boxer. Now, I've got them here side by side. Let me just level them up so they are at the same position. Let me just get this from above so I can just see that white line. There you go. And you can see that the TX15 is a little bit taller than the Boxer. There isn't a lot in it, but it definitely is a taller radio. There actually isn't that much in it when you take the antenna into account. And whilst this antenna isn't foldable, this one actually is. So in many ways, it's a little bit smaller. When it comes to width, if we place them side by side, they are very similar. If I'm honest, I'm just going to look down it. That is almost identical. Honestly, that is so close. It is crazy. There is really very little between them. And when it comes to height, let me just put them down side by side. If I just look down the table, they are very similar. There's a little bit more height at the top of the TX15. At the bottom, it's pretty much level. The TX15 does sit up a bit, but is that the antenna? No, the TX15 definitely sits up a bit because of this module bay at the back. So when you lay them down flat, the TX15 ramps up a little bit, but they're really isn't that much between them. Usually get a few questions around things like gimbal positioning. So for instance, if I just put the sticks at center, we have 10 centimeters between the sticks on the Boxer, and we have 10 centimeters between the sticks on the TX15. With regards to the center stick to outside edge, we're talking 40 mil on the Boxer, and we're talking 40 mil on the TX15. The ergonomics on the TX15 is very, very similar to the Boxer. It's not an identical shell. There are some differences. If I look at the gimbals in the Boxer are actually sat down further into the radio than they are on the TX15, but there isn't a lot in it, if I'm honest. Obviously, one of the big changes over the Boxer is the fact that it now is a much bigger color screen. You have 3 position switches on the outside instead of the 2 positions that you have on the Boxer. Everything else is pretty much the same layout. If you actually look at it, we've got our pots in the center, 3 position instead of 2 positions on the outside. You've got your trims, very similar placed. Our 6 buttons across here, and then our buttons on the edges. It is a very similar design, but it isn't an identical radio. If I just flip it around to the back and just spin it over, if we look, you can see we still have that nice big module bay on the back as well. The battery bay definitely appears bigger on the TX15. You can get a bigger battery in there, I'd say, compared to the Boxer as well. What it is different is on the grip areas at the back. If I just pop the back cover on both radios again, the Boxer has much more of a sort of cut-in for your hands. This, when I hold it, it's like that. Whereas this has a wider grip section, still rubber. It's quite hard rubber though, but it is rubber. But it is a thicker feel to the radio in the hand. When I put it in the hand compared to the Boxer has a bit of a thinner feel to it, but there isn't a lot between them. Now, putting it up against its most recent release, and that is the GX12, this radio is a bit unlike any of the others because obviously the Boxer is based off the full-size gimbals, V4s originally, but AGO1s upgraded. This radio used custom gimbals for it. It isn't based on the same AGO1 or AGO2s. Again, If I just go centers on this radio, this was just over 10 centimeters to the centers, and then from there out was 40 mil again. Very similar. Again, a different radio on here with the GX12. One of the big benefits of the GX12 is the fact that it has that Gemini X module. Both of these are based off that new LR1121 chipset, but this obviously has that Gemini and Gemini X functionality. But again, you're getting a radio here, H7 processor, color screen. About the only other one I do want to compare it to is the Pocket. Let me just grab my Pocket just so you can see it there. Pocket is still a much smaller radio, but it does give you an indication of what it's like. I should probably grab a TX16. I don't have a very modern TX16. I can't remember what version this is, but just to put it up against it, you can see that it is still a dramatically smaller radio. You've got a lot of the nice stuff that the TX16 had, so that color touchscreen, okay, not the size that one is, but that is big enough for me. I don't need any more than that. Its closest comparison is obviously the Boxer. That is the radio it is most similar to, but I have to say, I do think whilst the Boxer was almost perfect, I think they've actually tipped it over the edge here, because they have resolved a few of the complaints I had with the Boxer. One of them is that two-way switch. I'd have preferred three-way, and that's now what we've got. Color touchscreen, H7, and we still retain all of the great things that the Boxer gave us. Now, just to show you the differences in these displays, we obviously have a very similar size screen on the GX12 and the Boxer. They're just different kinds of screen, LCD. And then we've got our lovely touchscreen on the TX15. You can see that there's quite a big difference. It just makes navigation on the radio a little bit easier. If I go into the system menu and page across, you can see rather than that very basic two-dimensional menu system, you've got that lovely user interface now. And again, if you're someone that's going into the menus often, it's just going to help with configuration and setup and just make life a little bit easier overall. The next thing we're going to do is tear the radio down and give you a look at what is going on inside. Before we do this, I'm just going to place this foam under the radio. It just helps protect it in the teardown process. We're going to remove our battery from the radio there. I'm just going to have a look at what I can see from a screw perspective. Let's get the rubber grips off either side, because this is usually where we find things in our Radiomaster radios. That just flips out like that. We'll pop them there. I can now start to see some screws. So I've got one here and one here, one here, one here. We'll pop off our cover. We've got a strap there, but I don't think that's holding that together. Okay, we'll go with that and we'll see how we get on. Let me just grab what I think is probably the right size. That one. Oh, that's actually not long enough. I'm going to need a longer screwdriver. Okay, we'll use this one. So let's just get this in. Here we go. So you just need something with a little bit of depth for undoing the screws. So we'll do the bottom two first. Then we'll move up to the top. I don't think I'm going to need to remove the for the strap. Usually on Radiomaster radios you don't. We are in a little bit of new territory here, so we will see. Okay, we've done that. I'm going to then very carefully just hold the radio. Oh, there we go. I'm going to look inside. Okay, as far as I can tell, there are no cables front to back. Absolutely fantastic. So our back shell just falls away like that. And then that reveals the inside of the radio there. Okay, so looking around, things in here are rather interesting. In the middle, we can see our nice big ExpressLRS module. Now, this has a really big cooling fan on. It's going to suck in air from here and then drive that up out over this big heatsink on top of the module. You've got vents in the back of the case there, and then there's also vents on the top where the air will come out. So there's tons of airflow in here for that 1 watt module. We've then got our new AG02 gimbals on either side. Now, as I've said already, these are compatible from a fitment perspective with AG01s. They do look a little bit different. I haven't got an AG01 here to compare against directly, but it does look a slightly different design to the AG01. You can see we've got all our adjustment for these on either side, and then we've got our main PCB down here that seems to go up to the top and out, and then you've got individual PCBs for our buttons and switches. Looking here, I can't actually see the microcontroller, and I suspect that is because it is on the other side of this PCB. You can see down here we've got our SD card slot. That is empty because this radio has 4 gigs of storage on board already, but you can attach an SD card to it if you want to. We've got our battery power input. Got our reset button. We've got the I/O over here, so you've got the connection going to the ExpressLRS module. We've got the connection for the gimbals, and then we have some additional I/O over here as well. We've got an aux UART4, an aux UART5, as well as an aux UART3, and they seem to have left these blank for future use. Nice and easy to get to with Molex connectors as well, which is really cool to see. Also, next to the UARTs, you also have solder pads available as well. So if you don't have the Molex connections, you can solder directly to the PCB too. All of the connectors on this radio are nicely labeled, so you can see we've got our gimbal connection, our RGB connection. There's various test pads around this board as well. Got another connection down there, and then we've got the others labeled over here. Now, interestingly, on this side of the board, I'm not seeing the microcontroller, so it must be on the other side. But we do have this big ribbon cable, which I suspect is for our display. There is an IC on this ribbon cable. I've not seen that before. That's rather interesting. Might try and take a closer look at that a little bit more in a minute. Just getting in and looking at those gimbals a bit closer, you can see them there. You can see the Hall sensors on those boards there, and then there's another one there. And then moving up to the top, we've got little boards with our switches and our buttons on. So you've got a board here in a U shape, which has the 2 toggle switches on, and then you have your momentary switch on a separate board up there in the corner, and then that all comes into the connections that you can see over here, and then that's replicated on that side over there. Obviously, that ExpressLRS module is there in the middle. It's a really quite big module, actually. We've got some screws that hold that in place, and then we've got our single antenna connection up here, which heads out to our fully articulating antenna at the top. The next thing we're going to do is remove our ExpressLRS module. Now, I'm just going to use a magnet to get the screws out on this one because they seem to be held in place. There are 4 screws that hold this one in place. So there's 2 on either side and then 2 at the top. I'm going to have to very carefully undo the UFL for the antenna as well because we don't want to damage that. I'm just going to undo them. We're going to use the magnet to try and get the screws out. Maybe not. The cable for this is just clipped in down here. So I'm just going to unclip this from this little plastic holder. There we go. And then we've got a latched Molex connector there that holds that in place. And then now I've undone this, it should hopefully lift off. Does feel like something is holding it. Is there any connections? Oh, there's a connector on the bottom of this as well. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there's 2 connections on this. I'm going to very carefully undo the antenna cable first. There we go. And then unclip. And there we've got the ExpressLRS module. Just get the Screws off, pop that to the side there. So there you can see we have the Radiomaster SDT1000 version 1.64. I've not seen this module before. This is a new one to me. So we've got a large fan there, a big heat sink. We've then obviously got our RF chipset under there. We've then got our ExpressLRS chipsets. So we've got one there going to a Wi-Fi antenna, one here. I think we'll have to get this. Oh, another antenna there. I think we'll probably have to get this under the microscope to have a proper look. You've got voltage regulation over this side here, and then you'll have that SX1280 chipset hiding under that shielding there. Moving back to the radio, you can see under this there is very little. We just have that additional connector. There are some pads though here. I'm not exactly sure what they say. In RF unit, and then there's a UART. So we've got ground, TX, RX, and boot. And then obviously we've got our EdgeTX connections over here for our external module as well. Now, looking around, we have some Phillips screws here, 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 and here. And I think then that will allow us to actually remove the main center board. What I'm going to do, I think, is get all of these connections undone first of all. And then we will move over to that. And that should then give us the opportunity to try and get the main board out. Just trying not to damage any of the cables. There we go. I'm just noting where these are coming through. So this one for the RGB comes through this side here. This one for the RGB comes through that side down there. We've then got our switch cables at the top. So we've got this big flat one, which goes through to the two switches. So that's there and there. We've then got the smaller one, which heads off to the latching button in the corner. So again, we'll do that the same over that side there and there. Nice to see the upgraded to these latching Molex connections. Looks like our speaker cable here at the top. There we go. And then we have our rumble motor down the bottom for our haptics. So we're just going to undo that very carefully as well. And then the final connector I'm going to undo is this ribbon cable here. So I'm just going to flip the lever up on that and then very carefully pop that out, and that'll come out through the middle there. And then hopefully once we remove the screws, we'll be able to get this center main board out. Okay, so all those screws are out. I'm going to use our connector up here to give this a little bit of a tug. It's definitely moving now. I'm just now trying to understand what holds this in. I don't know whether I want to give it a pull and a pull back a little bit, because it seems to be latching in on the front here. This should be, I've just thought. Potentiometers. They are there. They've got little screws on them, look. There you go. There and there. They need to be undone before I can get them off. There we go. There's one. And there's two. And now, if we try that again. Yes, we're lifting very carefully. Start to lift this board. It is still in the plastic at the top here, so we want to try and ease it out a little bit at least. Feels like, is it the USB? So something holding on. Yeah, it's definitely the, feels like these at the top here. So there we go. A little bit of a tug. And ta-da! The board is removed. Oh, wow. Okay. Wasn't expecting that. So there it is, the main board. Now, what is a bit of a surprise to me is the fact that the microcontroller is on another separate PCB. If I just, let me just pop off our CNC wheel because it's going to fall off if I don't. If I just flip that up, you can see that the main microcontroller is on a separate board, and there are edge connectors on the side here and on this side here that connect it to the main board. And what this means is that Radiomaster are able to swap this out for a different microcontroller. And that really is only going to be done if they sort of intend to use this as a platform board. So this board used in multiple radios, and then they'd have the ability to swap out this core board so they could make a version of this with, say, an F4, or they could make a version of this with the H7, or even a different microcontroller in the future. On this side of the board, you can obviously see all of the additional electronics as well. We got loads of buttons on here. So we've got our trim buttons. We've got our 6 position buttons along here. Our trim. We've got our rotary encoder as well as our button for the rotary encoder. Buttons on the end for the menu and the model selection. And then we've got our buttons down here. We can see that microphone down there in the bottom corner. That is that microphone that they talked about in the spec. And then we've got a little battery down here as well. Interesting that this battery is soldered. That is not an upgradable battery, and that is unusual as well. That isn't something I've seen on one of these radios before. Looking at this core board in a bit more detail, now you can see it's called the Core H750 version 1.5. You can see our STM32H750 microcontroller. I've had a look at the other ICs on here, and basically what we have is the microcontroller. We have 64 megabits of SRAM, which is this Wimbond chip here. Next to this, we have our 4 gigabytes of onboard storage, so that's our NAND storage, and then over here you've got 128 megabit flash ROM, and that's really everything that's on the board. So we've got our microcontroller, SRAM, 4 gig of flash storage, and then 128 megabytes of flash. This is really quite an interesting setup. I'm not going to remove this from the main board. I don't really feel the need to go that far, but it is very interesting to see Radiomaster do this setup with a replaceable module, and I'm really interested in seeing if we see this PCB turn up in another product in the future. Just looking at the shell, now the board is removed. You can see our gimbals, and we'll look at them closer in a second. You've then got your CNC buttons. You've got your power button, your speaker in the center, as well as your rockers for your trims. With regards to swapping out these switches and buttons, this looks fairly straightforward. You don't need to actually remove the main core board to do that. You would be able to do these independently without doing that, and they're simply held in place with a couple of screws up there for the corner ones, and then you've got your nuts on the front for the switches. They do include in this kit the replacement buttons for this if you did want to swap them out, and we'll take a closer look at that before we finish the video. Alongside the TX15 being a new radio, we also have new gimbals, these upgraded AG02s. As I've mentioned already, these only come on the max version that you've got here. The standard version of the radio is going to come with a new version 5 gimbal. I can't really tell you anything about that today because I haven't seen that one for myself. But there are obviously going to be a lot of questions around these new gimbals compared to the original ones. So what we're going to do next is take a closer look comparing the two and just trying to show you what the differences are. Now, just comparing an AG01 to an AG02 two side by side. As I've said, these are the same size gimbals, so they are interchangeable. They have the same stick ends, but there are some differences in the machining. If you look around the outside, this stepping has gone and it's more flatter with finished off edges. You still have your adjustment positions up the side, you can see them, but they're now straight rather than having this cut in. You still have the adjustments available on the front of the gimbal like we had on the AGO1s, but we also now have the adjustments for the travel. So you can see that there and there and there. That isn't on this gimbal because it didn't have the travel adjustment in the same way. However, it is the same size gimbal, but as you've seen, the design has changed a little bit compared to what we had before. Looking at the gimbal from the back, overall I have to say it is very, very similar to an AGO1. I'll put the AGO1 up now in a minute, but you can see here you've got your hard stops there and there. You've got your hall sensors in the center here and here, which is glued. You've got your adjustment here for your ratchet and your tension, and then we've got our spring there, as well as our spring up there, and then you've got your bearings on the sides down there. Looking at it, and if I just pop that there and bring in an AGO1, it is very, very similar. There isn't a great deal of difference. The black ones are quite hard to show you. There isn't massive changes. It does look very similar, but there are obviously tweaks that Radiomaster have made. As I've said already, they've removed something to improve the inertia, and that should improve the response. But again, if I just swap over, the biggest change that you can see is actually on the sensors themselves. It's not a complete redesign, that's for sure, but there are little tweaks and changes all over the place. But what's great is that this gimbal will fit in to any radio that does take the existing version 4 gimbal or the AGO1. Now, before I share with you my final thoughts, we need to talk about price, because the TX15 is going to be available in a few different models. You've got a standard version, and then you've got the Max. As I showed already today, the Max is the radio we were looking at here today. Now, when it comes to the standard version of the radio, it is going to cost about $139.99. That is available in multiple different colors as well. You can see it's going to be available in iron grey, iceberg blue, mint mist, we've got frost white, lemon twist yellow, and hot pink. Now, these are really nice bright colours like we've seen from some of the other Radiomaster versions before. This standard version comes with the normal new version 5 gimbals. They're still Hall effect gimbals, but they're not the full metal CNC. It doesn't have the full metal CNC buttons on it as well, but it does have all of the same main functionality. Then it is also available in the Max version, like you've seen here on the channel today. You can get it in the red, like I've showed today. You can get it in the black, or you can get it in the gold as well. Whilst the red, I think, looks really good, the gold really does look a little bit special. Now, again, it's ExpressLRS, and this is available for $199.99. Again, same main overall spec. The only difference is you're getting the CNC Hall effect gimbals, the full metal switchgear. So, to share with you my thoughts on the Radiomaster TX15. Now, I've said what I'm about to say again a few times. However, this time, honestly, this is it. This is perfect. And it's hard for me to get as excited about this as I did for this, the Radiomaster Boxer. And I have said that this is the perfect radio before, but there are a few niggles on the Boxer. If I was being completely open with myself, I have discussed these before on the channel. I loved what Radiomaster did with the Boxer. They took what I liked about 2 or 3 different radios and put it all into the perfect package for me. There was just a few things on the execution of that which were not as good as they could have been. So for instance, there was no folding antenna on the Boxer. You only had 2 position switches on the outside. The 6 buttons along here were not fully programmable into the microcontroller, and it did have a smaller monochrome display. Radiomaster have taken everything that is great about the Boxer, put it into the TX15, taken everything that the people sort of fed back about and fixed it. So we've got fully articulating foldable antenna, dual band ExpressLRS with the latest chipset, 3-way position switches all along the top, fully programmable center button, as well as a nice big color touchscreen. Add on top of that, you have much newer microcontroller, so it's a much faster radio, lots of I/O functionality as you've seen inside as well, and it literally takes it over the top from where they were from the Boxer, which for me basically means perfect. This is the ideal mid-size radio. I always class these radios as mid-size. The TX16 is full size. This is mid, and the likes of the Pocket and others like that are small. This, though, for me, for the average FPV user, is just it. And I don't know what else could have been done to make the radio better, because it's got absolutely everything you would ever need. And if you're interested in getting yourself the latest radio, honestly, I think it's a complete no-brainer. It's as simple as that. Now, I am going to be using this as my main radio now on the channel, without doubt. If you are interested in getting yourself one, there will be a link to it, to the Radiomaster website, in the description. I do just want to be crystal clear in saying that that link will be an affiliate link. Radiomaster is one of the only brands that I actually use affiliate links with, because they are a brilliant company. And if you do use that link, I will get a small amount of kickback, commission, whatever you want to call it, but you don't have to use it. My opinion has nothing to do with those links. In fact, don't use them. Just go to the Radiomaster website and order it if you want to. I do not rely upon links on this channel, so it doesn't change anything. But if you do want to support it, they are there. But honestly, I think it's perfect. That's all I can say. Now, if you have found this video useful, please do let me know what you think in the comment section. Putting a video together like this is a lot of work. If you'd like to support the channel to allow me to do this, please do consider check out the links to my Patreon, as well as buy me a coffee. It is only through the support of my patrons I'm able to keep making content on this channel. I want to genuinely say a huge thank you to all of my Patreons. We would not be able to do this without your support. It's not just about buying products, because I do get some products for free, just like this one here. It's about being able to run the channel and make the content. And if you'd like to support us to allow us to keep doing it, please do consider checking it out. So that's it. It's out. It's brilliant. Stay safe. I will speak to you soon.